Hello there everyone, welcome back to my channel Fanfiction podcast. Today we will start a new story of the tales of the hero of Lucky Rabbit. Before we start, please like, share, subscribe and comment in the comment section below. Rookie. It was eons ago that the gods, seeking excitement, descended into the mortal world. They made the decision to spend the rest of eternity with their children, here on this lesser sphere. They agreed to seal their own divine powers, trying to enjoy life despite all of its limitations and discomforts. The gods could only grant their children but one thing: the power to fight monsters, called the FAMILIA. Children who are blessed belong to whichever god that bestowed upon them this power. They become the gods' familia, families in all but blood, an unbreakable bond, sharing their hopes, dreams, and futures, intertwined together to meet their destinies. Or at least that's what Bell Cranell heard. Bell, who was a young man at 14, white hair, ruby eyes, slim build with a sort of youthful innocence about him. Yet try as he might, every familia had been turning him away, a few refusing to even speak with the young man, much less give him a chance to prove his worth. Downcast, but still determined, he made his way from one to another. For Bell had a dream given to him from his grandfather. You see, Bell had lived on a small farm many miles away from the city he was now in. During that time he had been raised and captivated by the stories his grandfather would tell him. Stories about the Argonaut, Hercules, Aladdin, Gilgamesh, and many more. Dashing heroes, mythical legends rushing into great peril to save the day. Not to mention the pretty girl that seemed to be in every story. At least that's how his grandfather would tell him, oftentimes telling Bell on how to make moves to find love. At least that's what he said. Bell at times thought his grandfather was mostly just a perv, regaling him on how he must rescue women in the great dungeons of Orario, to woo a fair maiden, and to well, you get the picture. Bell face turning a slight pink as he remembered just how in detail his pervy grandfather would go. Still, the stories had captivated him, bringing forth his own dreams and hopes, his burning desire to go on what some people would call an adventure. That was why he was here of course, the great dungeon city of Orario, home to the familiars of gods, determined to delve into the deepest depths of the labyrinth far below the city's surface. Many searching for fame, glory, treasure, and some to save the world. His grandfather did tell him exactly what was at the very end of the dungeon, though. Stories of the one-eyed black dragon, a walking calamity itself. Scales and body so massive he could blot out the sun, ruler of the skies and the last of the great quests. Every adventure's dream was to be the one to defeat it. Though if Bell was being honest, the creature scared him. He could remember having nightmares about the monster for months after being told the story of how the great familiars of Zeus and Hera had failed in their conquest, smited down by the beat itself, forever destroying them. Yet, Bell would forever be grateful to his grandfather. That's why when he had disappeared, said to have been killed by a monster, Bell had been devastated, trying to live his life alone. On the farm, without his grandfather, it had been too much for the young man. That's why as soon as he was able, he packed up his things and left to start his first steps towards becoming an adventurer. Still, he hoped one day he could meet his grandfather again, in this life or the next. According to the gods, reincarnation was real. Sighing to himself, Bell continued to the next familia, traversing Daedalus Street, which when he thought of it, seemed far more like a district, a sprawling labyrinth of its own. Houses and buildings aplenty in a confusing swirl, containing a mix of slums and normal foundations. He looked towards his hands, strange gauntlets covering them, the last gift and only heirloom he had left of his old family. Apparently a gift from his mother and father who were now deceased. They looked like normal gauntlets, plated ridges, yet light and flexible, offering protection without the cost of movability. Yet, they were completely black, littered with hieroglyphs all along them. Where, should Bell say the magic words, ridged bumps would form on each hand, right above the knuckles, and a small elongated blade would form at the base of his palm, basically the bottom of his fist. Think of Asumas from Naruto. Weapons, yet as a full glove that can retract to leave the gauntlets in normal working condition. Of course, he barely knew how to use them, not really having the means to practice them on anything while living on his farm. Yet he had been told to keep them safe, and to keep them on him at all times. Still, it would have been great to understand exactly what the hieroglyphs meant. They didn't call it the gods' language for no reason, only a few non-gods being able to read the tricky and difficult symbols. Thoughts returning to his present as he reached the destination in front of him. A large, battered door stood in front of him, a sign hanging above. If he had been in the city longer, he would have been able to tell that this was the abode of the FAMILIA, a cruel and uncaring family who focused on exploration. Or so they said, truly most knew them as mainly thieves, brigands, and criminals. Yet Bell, not knowing any better, approached and knocked on the door. Hello. Is there anyone home? Bell said timidly as he continued his knocking. The building looked pretty ramshackle. Yet he was still hopeful. He knew not to judge a book by its cover after all. After a moment of silence, a dejected Bell moved on. This had been the 15th familiar he had been to. At least this one hadn't attacked or hurt him, he thought while rubbing his cheek. The familiar before had punched him, then told him to piss off. Sigh, he thought to himself, well, if I can't seem to join a familiar, maybe the guild will be able to help me. Confidence slowly gaining in himself. It would only make sense. Maybe they could point me to a familiar willing to take me in. With a new bounce to his step, Bell shortly found himself standing before the Pantheon, a majestic building filled with bright colors and symbols of various different tabards, all depicting the great familiars who worked in the dungeons, ensuring that the monster threat was under control, keeping the people of Orario safe. Bell, taking a deep breath, slowly found himself setting foot in the building for the first time. The Pantheon, home to the Adventurers Guild, was the refuge to many people. Advisors, guild personnel, vendors who could exchange crystals for various goods and vials. Bell, unsure of where exactly to go, approached the first desk he could see. A slim female elf, brown hair styled in a bob, with glasses and a cheerful smile awaited him. Hi there. I was wondering if, maybe, you could help me. Bell said in a pleading tone, big eyes peering up at the elf, tugging at her heartstrings just a tiny little bit. After all, Bell was a pretty cute kid. Unique white hair, innocent face, and those ruby red eyes. Just screaming out to everyone who gazed upon him. Cute, he did look like a rabbit, which certainly helped. The elf, clearing her throat quickly as to not give away her errant thoughts, answered the young man in front of her. Yes, Mr. Bell Crannel. Mr. Crannel, what can the guild do for you today? She said, smiling down at the obviously nervous young man. Well, you see, I'm new to the city, only having just arrived here from out in the country, he said, pausing slightly. Go on, the elf nodded encouragingly. It's just, I've had a dream for as long as I can remember. I want to be an adventurer, he said, for the first time with confidence. The elf, on the other hand, looked down at the boy in front of her. No, surely not. A small, timid boy like him braving the depths of the dungeon. He'd die. The first day for sure. Well, not on her watch anyways. I'm sorry, Mr. Bell, but I'm afraid that's just not possible. Maybe come back when you're older. The dungeon is a dangerous place after all. We wouldn't want you to get injured or even worse now, would we? She said in a sweet tone, hoping to get her point across. But sorry, what's your name? He said, a light blush speckled onto his cheeks. Aina Tulle. Miss Ainam. I've wanted to be an adventurer all my life. Now that my grandpa died, I'm all alone. I left home in order to fulfill my dream and his. I have to do this, I promised him I would try. Yet every familiar I approached told me to leave, refusing to even give me an opportunity to show them what I'm worth. I know I don't look like much, but I promise you, I will be an adventurer with or without your help. So please, will you help me? Even if it's just pointing me in the right direction, he asked wistfully, gazing at Aina with an intensity she had rarely seen before. Peering at the young cute man, she decided to think about things. He seemed to be oddly determined to become an adventurer. She also knew firsthand how some familiars in the city tended to, well, grind through the new recruits as it were. The last thing she wanted was someone so young and earnest to be taken advantage of, especially since he was such a cutie. God, just think of what a god like Ishtar could do if she got those greasily hands on this boy. With his unique looks, he'd be high in demand. Not knowing what other options she could do, She couldn't help what she said next. "All right, Mr. Crannel, I'll help you. Come with me," she said, motioning for him to rise and follow her to a private booth reserved for advisors. Bell, with an excited gleam in his eye, quickly rushed after her, excited to find out just exactly she had planned. "First things first. What do you know about the dungeon, Mr. Crannel, sir? Also, how many vials and what kind of supplies do you have with you? Weapons? Armor?" she said patiently. Once they had sat down, she needed to know exactly what she was working with after all. "Well, on me I currently only had 3,000 vials, and for armor, I have nothing." Head hanging down in shame. "Huh. You came all the way to Orario to be an adventurer with only 3,000 vials. And no armor. Are you stupid?" she said, voice raising in bafflement at the young man in front of her. 3,000 vials was barely enough to get him started anywhere. He also had no hope of trying to buy his way into a more predominant familia. She hadn't expected much from the naive boy, but still she had expected a little more than this. "What about a weapon? Do you have anything prepared to become an adventurer?" "Well, I have my grandfather's heirlooms. He gave them to me, and they should work for a weapon," he said shyly, holding out his gauntlets that until now had been covered by his long sleeves of his brown coat. What are those? I've never seen gauntlets like those before." "Are those hieroglyphs?" Aina, shocked at what she was seeing, was confused. At first she expected him to pull out a rusty dagger or something, considering how ill-equipped he was. Yet these gauntlets are like nothing she had ever seen before. Never before had she seen hieroglyphs carved directly into a weapon. Even still, she could tell at a simple glance that the craftsmanship of these gauntlets were fist-class adventurer level, something that she would expect the Freya or Luckey familiar with, not some country bumpkin who had freshly arrived at the city. Bell, who had been looking down, shamed-faced at his lack of readiness, didn't know what to do. Miss Aina had gone completely silent as he had shown her his gauntlets. Were they really that bad? His grandfather had made him promise to avoid showing people them, to never, ever, give them away for any reason. Yet now he wondered if it had all been a trick. Maybe his grandfather had simply been embellishing things. "Where did you get those?" she asked, voice cracking towards the end. "My grandfather. He said that my parents had left these for me before they passed." "I'm sorry, Miss Ainham. I just don't have anything else." "Are they really that bad?" he asked, tears forming in the corner of his eyes. "Mr. Crannel, no matter what you do not show those off to people. I suggest keeping them hidden as much as possible from here on out. Only show me, or when we find you a familiar them. That is, after you know that you can trust them," she warned gravely, trying to put the seriousness of things into her voice. "Hey, Miss Aina, shouldn't I be able to trust my familiar?" he asked, confused and unsure. "Listen to me, Belle." She drew closer and spoke softly. "Orario is a diverse and largely populated city, home to many amazing gods and people, yet home to an equal amount of ruffians and deities who, well, let's just say, are less than kind. Those gauntlets of yours, if I had my guess, are most likely worth a fortune. I fear someone may kill you or steal from you, should they ever find out about their worth. Heed my words, Mr. Crannel. This is very important." "Yes, Miss Ainham," Bell said, head bowing, trying to muster all the sincerity that he could. "Do you think I can become an adventurer with these, Miss Aina?" he asked, eyes once again going large and round. "Yes, Mr. Crannel. I think you can become an adventurer." "No, where are your Aina?" interrupted when the rabbit-like youth crashed into her, giving her a large hug. Aina, or elf, who normally didn't let other races touch her, turned beet red, voice breaking in embarrassment. Mr. Crannel, sir. Please." Bell, who had returned to seat, big eyes watching her, completely unaware of exactly what his hug had done to his new friend, turned advisor, grinned on happily. Aina was the first person to ever agree that he could in fact live out his dream. Coughing, Aina, trying to regain her composure, looked at the young man once again, sweat slightly dripping down the back of her head from embarrassment. He is absolutely going to be a heartbreaker in a few years. Already feeling her heartstrings tug, worried about him in the short while she had known him. Especially after Maris, Ainz didn't really let people get close to her anymore. One could only take so much heartbreak when someone you cared for went into the dungeon to never return. It made sense for her to have a sort of clinical detachment. Yet Belle was easily wiggling into her heart, looking at him fondly and feeling like he needed a big sister. Well, was it really so bad she looked out after him? After all, the boy was clueless about so many things. Yet what to do with him? He needed to find a strong familiar, one that could take someone in and train them properly. Yet who? Not many of the major players would bother with a young boy just starting. Well, regardless, she needed to find a place for him to stay, somewhere he wouldn't get into trouble. Yes, that's it. A thought entering her mind. I know exactly where to go. They had owed her a while back for helping someone during their troubles. Who's to say now wouldn't be a perfect time to repay her? Standing, motioning Belle to join her, Aina stood and left to approach her pink-haired friend. Misha, my shift's just about over, yet something has come up. Would you be able to hold down things here while I take care of it? She asked, fingers crossed together in a pleading motion, begging her longtime friend to help her. Aina. Oh, of course, no problem, Misha said, winking, looking at Belle with a sly smile. I can see how you might be busy. He's a cutie, she continued, much to Aina's continued embarrassment. No, it's not like that. I'm just looking out for him, okay? He's new, and I just don't want another one too. Well, you know, Aina said. Misha, who had lost her smirk, looked down in chagrin. Sorry, Aina. It's okay, Mr. Cranell. Come along. I assume, since today's your first day in the city, you don't have a place to stay. Yes. Oh, no, I don't. I started looking for a familiar as soon as I got here. It totally slipped my mind, he said, hand slowly rubbing the back of his head. Oops. Aina, shaking her head at the foolish boy, headed for the door. Come along now, Belle. I know the perfect place for you to stay. Belle, who was extremely thankful for finding Miss Aina, followed suit, happy that things were finally looking up. Belle, not knowing exactly what to expect following Aina, followed her closely. He was still learning his way around the city. How bad would it be if he ended up lost and Miss Aina had to look for him, especially after all she had done? Yet he couldn't help but feel the excitement in his stomach. Or maybe it was hunger. He hadn't really eaten today, he realized. Yet when they had approached a warm-looking 3-storied building, booming with laughter, and a mouth-watering aroma flowing out from its double front doors, Belle couldn't help but let his feet wistfully carrying him closer. Luckily for him, this was exactly where she wanted to go. Mr. Cranell, Aina said, hand reaching out to stop the youth from entering. Yes, Miss Ainam? Oh, and you can call me Belle. All of my friends do, he said, big smile, in her direction. Belle, then, can you do me a favor and let me do all the talking? Also, regardless of what we discuss, I don't want you interrupting or complaining, okay? She said, frowning at the boy. Gosh, he really could be a damn charmer. Hopefully MIA would take a look at him and accept him with pity. She did owe Aina a favor after all. Belle, nodding away, followed Aina as she led them inside, seeing the hostess of fertility for the first time. An amazing restaurant bustling with great food, cute waitresses, and happy, inviting atmosphere. At least that what Belle thought, until Aina took them directly to one of the most intimidating people Belle had ever seen. She was a brown-haired dwarf with ponytail hairstyle, muscled forearms, indicators of great strength. Even Belle, inexperienced as he was, could easily tell that this was a powerful person, someone not to be crossed, unless he didn't care about living anymore. Yo, Aina. How are you? Who's your friend? It's pretty rare seeing you out and about at this hour. Especially away from the guild, the dwarf lady said. RMIA. I was wondering, since it's not quite your supper rush, if you had a few seconds to talk. Aina pleaded. Oh, sure. Here, let's head into the back. Belle, who hurried to follow the two women, wondered why exactly Aina had brought them here. Now, are you going to tell me what brings you here? I'm assuming it's for a favor, considering you almost never want to speak in private. Who's the pipsqueak? MIA said, gaze lingering on Belle, causing him to flinch. Well, MIA, remember how I helped you out with that favor a few months ago? This is Belle Cranell. He's new to the city and is currently looking for a familiar. I was hoping, maybe, if you're okay with it, he could stay here while we figure out where exactly he's going to end up. We'd pay you, of course, 1,000 vials a day. Only, if you could include maybe a meal or two. He doesn't have that much money on him. Aina said, all the while becoming less and less confident as Mia's gaze turned sour. Belle, turning to Aina in concern, was about to say something, until her sharp glare caught him. Off guard, gaze silencing him without much effort. Belle, snapping his mouth shut, knew better than to speak. Sides he had promised to Aina, and the heroes of legends were always true to their word. Mia wasn't a fool. Something about this was unlike Aina. Gazing at Belle now without concern, for his panicked expression, she could tell that he was a cute kid, seemed innocent enough. Kind of reminded her of. No, it couldn't be. Her mind flashing back to another similar white-haired woman, who pleaded to not be cast out after her familia disbanded. God banished to the countryside. Heavy with child, it was one of the big reasons Mia had retired. Angered with her goddess's decision, he was so similar that for a moment she felt a need to help the young man. That was why she started the hostess, trying to provide a safe haven to lost girls to make up for what she did. So what that he was a boy, maybe that girl could have given birth to a boy. Would she have turned her away if she did? Hell no, Mia could be a harsh person. Yet she was never cruel, regardless of what some said about her. She did owe Aina a favor after all. Mia never one to renege on a debt turned addressing the elf. Sigh, Aina, you really know how to pick them, hey? Fine. The boy can stay with us, though I assume only for a few days. Belle, perking up at the offer, looked at Mia with wonder in his eyes. Oh, thank you, Mia. Honestly, it really helps me out a lot. Ya, don't mention it. Come along, boy. Let's lead you to your room. Ryu. Syr. Come here. For a sec, would Ya. Mia shouted in front of her, calling over two of her waitresses. One was a lightly green-haired elf, strikingly beautiful, with haunting blue eyes. The other a bubbly girl full of warmth, with gray hair, gray eyes, and a cheery disposition. Belle, entranced by their entrance, blushed deeply when Syr grinned at him coolly. This young man here is Belle. He's going to be staying here for a few days. Can you lead him to a spare bedroom on the 3rd floor? The one besides you, Ryu, Mia stated, uncaring about Belle's shy nature. Oh, and Belle, no funny business. Just because you're staying with a bunch of girls, you better not doing anything suspicious. Mia said, causing Belle to squeak in fright, only moving once. Syr grabbed his arm, pulling him slightly. Syr had never really been shy, sides the boy seemed cute. Mia never did let any men stay here after all. What a fun idea, she said, grinning as she went. Belle, was it? Well, come now, don't be shy. Wow, aren't you a little cutie? Come and follow me. Syr, now all but dragging Belle, as he slowly protested, red in the face like a tomato. Ryu, who watched the scene in amusement, followed suit. After all, young Cranel needed someone to rein Syr in. She was a bit of a handful. All the staff at the hostess knew as much. Mia, after the trio had left, turned to Aina. I really hope you know what you're doing. Now off with you. He'll be fine here on his own. It sounds like you have some work to do. Aina, who had been frowning as Belle left, disappointed. Geez. Did he have to look so pleased? To being led by Syr. Jumped at Mia's voice, partially forgetting why she was there as she grumpily looked at the leaving group. Yes, right away, Mia. Sorry about that. Thanks again, really, you saved my butt. Now if only she knew where to start. Oh well, no time like the present, as Aina left to brain storm about exactly what Familia could take in Belle. Belle, who had gotten settled, was enjoying his evening, with Miss Aina lending him 2,000 vials to help pay for his time at the hostess. Everyone seemed so nice, even people like Ryu, who seemed cold at first. Yet Belle could tell she was kind. At least she seemed to be, with the way she doted on Syr. Syr was another one that Belle struggled with, her cute personality constantly pushing him to do exactly what she wanted. Still, it wasn't bad, being able to speak to them comfortably. He hoped to get to know the other waitresses, only briefly meeting Chloe and Anya. The food, though, was absolutely amazing. Belle didn't think he had ever in all his years tasted something so great. The different cuisine, perfectly cooked and seasoned. If he died in this was heaven, well, that wouldn't be so bad. Yet as the night drew on, getting exhausted, Belle decided to head to bed after everything that happened today. Wishing the staff a good night, He headed up the stairs, crawling under the sheets and blowing out the lantern on his bedside table. Lying there, he thought again of his grandfather. Grandpa, if you're listening somewhere, I've really done it. I made it to Orario. I hope you would be proud of me. I even got to meet such amazing people. I hope that things continue to go in my favor. I don't think anyone could be as lucky as me. Still, I miss you. I hope wherever you are, you're happy, one day in this life or the next. I hope to see you again. Belle, who hadn't cried in a while about his grandpa's death, couldn't help it as a single sob broke through, then another. He still missed him so much. Would this pain ever start to fade? Wishing so much that tomorrow, he'd finally find his familia. A family he could be happy. Again, maybe. If he was lucky, a place he could belong. So lost in his musing, he complete missed Ryu and Syr, who had been standing outside of his door. Both had wanted to check up on their new guest one last time before bed had paused. Before knocking, hearing him speaking to himself, looking at each other and nodding, they decided to leave the young man to himself, silently promising to try and help ease his pain, his burden, even if it was just a little bit. Hopeless. It was absolutely hopeless, Aina thought. The next day's sun rising cheerfully in the sky, almost mocking her as she lamented about things she had spent almost all night trying to find a familiar to take in Belle. Yet almost no one would accept her untested rookie. Worse yet, when she described him, she was mocked for her foolishness. Sighing to herself, she entered the guild hall, hoping that today some miracle could occur, letting her find a good home for Belle. Whining to herself mentally, she almost didn't notice the small-chested, red-haired deity wailing in the lobby. Almost, who was she though to herself as she listened in? Luckey was a strange one, that's for sure. For being such a powerful familiar, she was pretty eccentric. I am so B-O-R-E-D-D-D-D-D-D. Ross, when is my sweet AIS gonna be back? Or adorable little Leffia, bet her chest has grown 3 sizes in the eternity. They've been gone. Rose, what am I gonna do? Please, Rose. Luckey complained loudly for everyone to hear. Luckey, you're a goddess. Please, it's only been 1 day since they left for the expedition. You can't be that bored. Control yourself. The red-haired werewolf said, chastising the goddess for her unruly behavior. But, without their cute little butts to pet, or the chests to grope, there's nothing to do. Twilight Manor is so empty. Help me, Rose. Luckey said, a dangerous glint entering her eye. Her pleading changing to having her instead reach out to squeeze the werewolf's chest. Crack. Rose's answering slap putting Luckey back into her place. Most of the guild was used to her tendency to make perverted motions to the attractive females Luckey met. Aina, annoyed with the whole scene, was going to walk by. She did have bigger things to focus on. Unless. Wait. Of course. Aina, who just had the spark of an idea enter her head. She hadn't even bothered asking the Luckey familiar due to Finn and the rest being one expedition. Sure, Luckey was a little different. Okay, she was a lot different, still Belle could do far worse than them. Luckey was one of the strongest and best in the entire city. She also knew exactly what to do with her too, how to entice her with her newfound plan. Slowly Aina made her over to Luckey. Goddess Luckey. Luckey, I have an idea. You said you're bored, right? Aina said, stepping into Luckey's vision. Rose hastily making her escape now that someone else was there to deal with. The groping goddess. Little Aina. My, how you've grown. You have an idea to get rid of my boredom. Luckey said, looking mischievously at Aina's chest as she slowly got closer. Yes, Goddess Luckey, I have just the perfect thing. A new familiar member. After all, they've all left you to go on that expedition. Just think about it. A new member who would be willing to do exactly what you wanted. Just the thing, to keep you entertained, she said, covering her chest. She liked Belle. That didn't mean she would willing to let Luckey grope her. Though, a new familiar member? Bar boring, Luckey said, curiousness lost, no longer interested. But you should meet him, Luckey. After all, Mia's taken a liking to them. Letting them stay at the hostess. Please, Luckey, meet him. I promise you won't be disappointed, at least, Aina. Hoped the goddess wouldn't be. She never could tell with Luckey. She could fall for the rabbit. Like youth appreciating his cuteness, or she could completely lose interest. It was still a bit of A mystery of who the goddess liked and why. At least when they didn't have large boobs to keep her occupied. MIA here. I guess, she doesn't really like a lot of people. Fine, I'm sold. Loki, who had been rubbing her chin thoughtfully while Aina explained things. Sides, Loki thought, it's not like I have anything better to do. She really was bored. She missed her cute little familia while they were gone. Phew, Aina thought. One hurdle down. Now it was all on Belle next. Rose, taking an early break. I'll be back soon, okay? Aina called out, following the goddess to the hostess. Please, Belle, if you were ever lucky, now was the time to use it. Belle, meanwhile, who had been instructed to stay at the restaurant while things were happening, had kept himself busy by assisting with the chores, the girls absolutely adoring. The cute boy couldn't help but gush here and there about him. Even MIA seemed to be less gruff, as she watched him earnestly assisting the chores. The boy didn't have to, but after waking up he insisted, stating that he felt he owed them something for letting him stay. Red eyes, in a killer puppy dog stare, even MIA had trouble saying no. Belle, you're just such a hard little worker, aren't you? SYR exclaimed, grabbing Belle from behind and giving him a big hug as he finished mopping the floor. Anya and Collie besides, them poking his cheeks fondly as SYR gushed all over him. They had gotten to know him better as the day progressed. Hearing Belle's story, the staff had grown to have a fondness for the cute little rabbit. Sides, he was just so innocent, the way he would blush and stammer at every touch, only able to look them in the eye, face straining as he tried to not look down. It has amused the girls to no end, oftentimes trying to bring attention to their chest area. At least SYR, Collie, and Anya were. Ryu was a little too proper to join in, though she did smile more than once at the boy. Usual for Ryu. It was exactly this scene that Loki found herself witnessing. In front of her, a red-faced boy, blushing fiercely, being hugged by a cute waitress from behind, with two in front fussing over him as well. Aina, hurrying behind her, entering just a moment later, couldn't help control her reaction after seeing the scene. Belle, she squealed, shocked at the display. Loki, laughing at the hurt in Aina's face, slowly started to realize something. Watching as Aina tried to pry him from the waitresses who in turn refused to let him go. Belle pleading with all of them, not exactly sure what was going on. This kid is a friggin' chick magnet. Aina had mentioned him only arriving recently, that and a brief description of him on the way over. Yet already he had 4 gorgeous women all over him, which meant if she got him into her familia, then she could use him to easily pick up chicks. All right, she cheered internally, daydreams filling her head, having Belle to her side as hundred of women fussed over him, leaving Loki free to grope what and where she pleased. Mischievous grin on her face, she approached them all. Hello, Belle, was it? Aina here has been telling me you need a new familiar in order to enter the dungeon here. How would you like to join us? Loki, drooling a little still at the thoughts of all the fun she was going to have, was giggling to herself in a creepy manner. The waitress's dark expression entering their eyes started to tighten their grips. Loki was trouble. They knew all too well the mischief she would get into. Belle, who at first thought he misheard the goddess, stopped moving completely as silence reigned in the hostess, freeing himself effortlessly. In a flash he had left the woman where they were, reaching for Loki's hand, peering into her eyes with his innocent cute face. Goddess, you really mean it? You'll let me be a part of your familia? Loki, caught off guard by the sudden rush, stared at Belle, blushing slightly, her heart beating a little faster. Wait. The Loki, the infamous female groper, a title she herself was proud of, blushed because of this. Belle. Holy shit, this boy was going to be a gold mine. While the rest looked on, powerless to stop Belle. He had sounded so happy and excited about things. They couldn't stop him, it would only crush the poor boy. Still, Loki, who had recovered somewhat, felt a deep chill enter her. Looking up quickly, wondering where it came from, was met by the cold, harsh stare of the women. Their look promising hellish retribution should she mistreat the boy. Loki, unsure of what exactly she did wrong here, chose instead to make a quick exit. You got it, kid. Follow me. It's time to get things started. Loki, holding fast to Belle, hauling him with her, left the hostess, ignoring the shouts and calls of alarm from the women inside. Aina, who all of a sudden had massive headache and a frown on her face, looked at the retreating god. Oh, did I make a mistake, she wondered. Oh, I really hope not, she thought, worrying at the turn of events. Luckey, who had brought Belle to the Twilight Manor, wasted no time in quickly showing around. The squirt. Hell, she didn't want anyone swooping in and stealing her lady's magnet. So she was in a bit of a rush to get him a Falna. So what if she had quickly rushed him through floor after floor of the grand castle-like structure? She was sure he'd figure it out sometime later. Was now seated on Belle's lower back, his own back bare to her, pricking her finger and running a line of blood down his spine. Luckey summoned her arcanum. With a soft glowing blue light, jester-like symbol now appearing on his back, Luckey looked down satisfied. Grabbing her sheet of paper, she slowly etched the newfound hieroglyphs from his back onto the sheet. Curiously, she gazed down at the paper. Was her eyes deceiving her? Belle Cranel. SRTI 98. VITI 05. DEXI 66. AGII 49. MAGI 0. Skill, Luck of the March Hare. Belle has greatly increased luck, gaining increased experience, growth, monster drops, and probability. This skill is affected by each increased level. This skill also gives Belle an increased chance to learn new skills at a greatly increased pace. What the fuck, Luckey thought to herself. This skill was unreal, increased probability, faster, growth, literally everything you could possibly want. It even increased by level. Just how insane could this little rabbit get? His stats were also unreal. It was pretty common for most newbies to have 0 across the board when first receiving their Falna. Yet here Belle stood. Just who the fuck was he? Belle, completely clueless to the internal dialogue his goddess was having, smiled, hymning to himself, legs kicking happily, unaware of what exactly his flaner said. Pleased with the recent turn of events. He'd done it, Grandpa, he thought. He had finally found a new home. Support. Chapter summary. His stats were also unreal. It was pretty common for most newbies to have 0 across the board when first receiving their Falna. Yet here Belle stood. Just who the fuck was he? Belle, completely clueless to the internal dialogue his goddess was having, smiled, hymning to himself, legs kicking happily, unaware of what exactly his flaner said. Pleased with the recent turn of events. He'd done it, Grandpa, he thought. He had finally found a new home. Luckey sat there for a while, stunned. Getting off of Belle, she passed over his sheet. Belle finally, seeing his status, jumped up and down in excitement. Getting dressed and feeling excited. More than ever. Both were complete caught off guard. Luckey, for the second time in the last few minutes, as soft blue light of arcanum glowed faintly around the room. What? Luckey asked, looking around for the source in panic. She wasn't using any of her godly powers. So what was cause there? Rushing over to a stunned Belle, who had just finished putting on his grandfather's heirlooms. They gazed in wonder at the hieroglyphs. Luckey just now noticing the priceless treasures the rabbit-like boy was carrying. Where did you get these? Belle, you need to answer me right now. A frantic Luckey asked, her playful and teasing attitude gone, now full of contemplation as she gazed at a certain pair of gauntlets. Just who exactly is this Belle? What kind of secrets did the boy have? Just who did she allow to join her familia? Goddess, you or my grandfather gave them to me. He said they were from my parents and precious heirlooms that would help me on my journey. Did I do something wrong? Miss, Aina told me to not show anyone, yet never before had they shone like that. A worried Belle said, eyes darting to Luckey and back to his hands. I've only ever seen a handful of weapons like this one before. One of the greatest creations of the god of forges herself, Hephaestus. Come with me, Belle, we need to get to the bottom of this. Do not show anyone these outside of your familia. Only use them in the dungeon. We're going to need something to help disguise them. Come along now, Belle. Yes, goddess. Coming. And so a pensive Luckey lead, a confused and concerned Belle, leaving Twilight Manor at dusk, heading somewhere Belle knew not. It didn't take long before Belle stood before a massive, intricate, and beyond breathtaking sight. Oh, sure, he had seen it before, the majestic tower that jutted from the center of Orario. Beautifully designed, architecture of the gods themselves, spanning for miles above the surface, top not visible as it reached to the very heavens above. Yet this was the first time Belle had seen the Tower of Babel up close. Wonder in his eyes, He turned to Luckey. Goddess, how come we're here? You said you wanted to speak to someone, right? Belle asked, having difficulty looking away from the majestic tower. Yes, Belle, hold your questions, my little rabbit. We're here to see the person I believe created these gauntlets themselves. Shush now and follow along, okay? Luckey, who had regained some of her composure on the walk, was now brimming with excitement. She was the god of tricksters after all. She had calmed down after her unusual bout of surprise. Luckey had a sixth sense of knowing when someone was trying to pull a fast one on her. Yet Belle was truly as innocent and clueless as he seemed. No, this was simply just pure luck that Luckey found him. And boy, could she think of all the fun she could have. Grinning her trademark mischievous smile, she led the star-struck Belle up floor by floor, until she stood exactly where she wanted to be. Two large doors engraved with the symbol of the Hephaestus Familia itself. Knocking twice on the door, they slowly opened to reveal the goddess inside. Sitting behind her desk was a beautiful buxom woman, ruby eyes and a short red haircut, not too far off from Luckey's face, half covered by a large eye patch on the right of her face. Yo, Hephaestus, Luckey said, stepping into the chamber and greeting the god as her equal. Oh, Luckey, what brings you here at this hour? I would have assumed by now you'd be at the hostess or another pub drowning your sorrows as you wait for the expedition to return. Luckey, who now stumbled at being called out in such a way, regained her balance while rubbing the back of her head. Ahaha, what a funny joke, Hephaestus. Anyways, I've come to show you my newest little prize. Behold, Luckey said, stepping to the side and making a grand flourish at Belle. The boy, who had gotten sidetracked staring at the various weapons all around the office in excited wonder, completely caught off guard by Luckey's antics, rushed over to stand by his goddess. Yet tripping as he went, ended up colliding into Luckey, sending them both tumbling to the ground. Hephaestus, unable to help herself, started to chuckle heartedly at the scene and chaos unfolding in front of her. Belle, who had finally freed himself, bowing profusely over and over at Luckey, begging for forgiveness as a grumbling Luckey rubbed her backside. So, impressive as expected of Luckey. Ahahaha, Hephaestus laughed again and again at sheer absurdity in front of her. Yet after a few minutes of explanations, a light blush on Hephaestus's face at her out of character response. They now had Belle gauntlets in front of her, Hephaestus staring at them, recognition crossing her features. She knew these, of course. How did you get them? Wonder filling her voice, as she looked at Luckey, who simply shook her head, nodding at Belle. They were my parents. At least that's what my grandfather said when he gave them to me. He said they were a family heirloom and that they would have wanted them for me. Belle responded timidly. Why was everyone always freaking out about his gauntlets? Confusion etched on his face as he waited for an answer. You grandfather here. Can you describe him to me? Hephaestus asked, with slight hesitation. So Belle did, going into detail and telling his story to both goddesses in front of him. Only when he finished did Luckey and Hephaestus look at each other. Oh, they had recognized the description of his grandfather all right. How could they not, with him being one of the most powerful gods in all of Orario for many, many years? Zeus just was exactly where you planning? Both goddess wondered. It was pretty clear that Zeus had cared for the boy. Equally as clear that he never once told him who he was, yet Belle had to be. Yes, one of the sons of either the Hera or Zeus. Familiars. Wondering at the other revelations that could possibly be revealed, Luckey interrupted the silence. Belle here, why don't you do me a favor? Why don't we get someone up here to show you around and select a nice set of armor for you? Oh, I don't know, at roughly 10 to 15,000 vials. Hephaestus, could you get someone to show him around? You just leave us goddesses to talk some boring talk. You wanted to be an adventurer, right? Luckey, who at this point wasn't looking at the boy, instead her gaze laser-focused on the desk in front of her, waited for Hephaestus to jump on the offer. Yes, I'll get Welf to come and help you around. He's a level 1 like yourself. Skilled armor, he'd probably jump at the chance to help you pick out some armor. Hephaestus, who started to ring a bell near her desk, waited for one of her familiar to show. Miss Ino, please bring Belle over to Welf's workshop and ask him to help him pick out some armor for him, would you? Luckey and I have much to discuss, Hephaestus said to a young, burly dwarf female, one of the many smiths who was a part of her familia. Right away, goddess. she said, first bowing to her matron, then grabbing a confused, stuttering Belle away from everything. Waiting for the door to close, both gods returned to staring at one another. Just what exactly was Zeus planning? Belle, who had been dragged unceremoniously towards a small smithy on the second floor of Babel, unable to break his grip from the blonde dwarf, he had just consigned his fate to what was happening. Yet he would be lying if he wasn't just a bit excited. Holding on tightly to the bag of money his goddess had given him, his gaze wandering around to the different creations in this smaller size room. Various weapons and armors adorning the walls as he approached someone currently working on his forge. Wealth. Hephaestus says you need to babysit the kid here. Find him some armor to wear for the dungeon, something in his price range, all right. His you problem now. Ino said, dumping Belle in front of her another tall young man. Older than Belle, but not by too many years. He looked at the person. He was a striking man with short spiked red hair, a tall and powerful build. Wearing a black robe and a blue undershirt, the man who had been in the process of etching something on the black and silver chest piece looked up at his visitors. I know. Oh, wait, you're looking for armor. Let me get a quick look at you. Don't you worry. I'll get you sorted out. Thanks, I know, I got it from here, Welf said, approaching Belle, as Ino left the way. The came I'm waving in acknowledgement. Tiny guy, aren't you? Not very big, so anything overly heavy is out. Yes, better. To be light or medium armor. Mr. Welf said, now measuring Belle with a calculating look. Belle, I'm Belle Cranel. Your name is Welf. I don't really know much about armor. Luckey and Hephaestus said you could help. Of course. I'm a blacksmith myself after all. Yes, looking at you, I can already somewhat visualize the type of armor you need. Tell me, Belle, how do you fight? Welf asked curiously, looking at the boy in front of him. I fight with these gauntlets. So I guess my fists and maybe legs. I'm kind of a rookie, but they are all I have. A melee fighter then, huh? So medium armor it is. Now what's your price range? Welf said, leaning back, only for him to be so caught up in talking and measure the boy in front of him. He didn't realize that he had gotten so close to the armored chest piece that was on the anvil, accidentally bumping it, for it to fall and strangely enough roll slightly towards Belle. The boy, who reached down to pick it up, noticed the small hair on the armor, the very thing that Welf had just finished etching. Oh, he said curiously. It kind of felt like a sign. After all, wasn't everyone comparing him to a rabbit? Mr. Welf, what about this? It's medium armor, right? Belle asked, holding on to the armor in front of him. Hey. Oh no, that's not good enough for someone like you. I've just a novice smith. I don't even have the skill forge yet. You'd be much better off with a smith of higher quality. No, it's perfect. Can I please have this armor, Mr. Welf? Belle pleaded with the young blacksmith, eyes wide and charming with his innocence. Welf unsure what to do or say. Fine, let's see if it fits, Belle. Here, try these on. Welf no passing him additional pieces that matched the armor. A silver chest plate, braces that would sit on his forearms, large high top, plated boots that went to just below his knee, black sturdy cloth under it all to support the armor. It was a fetching set of gear, even had some ruby highlights that would match the boy perfectly. Yay! Belle said, cheering brightly as they got to work trying on the armor that Welf had made. Humming brightly to himself, his luck really had turned around since coming to Orario. He thought, excitement contagious as he continued to put on his newfound armor. Meanwhile, back with Luckey and Hephaestus. You know who his grandfather is, right? Yes, Luckey, I'm not stupid, I recognized him as well. What is Zeus's game, I wonder? Still, what can you tell me about these gauntlets? Regardless of his plan, it's obvious he abandoned the boy. At first I brought him on with a whim, letting him join my familia, without a lot of thought involved. Yet I'm just starting to realize just how lucky I gotten. So, tell me, what are these weapons? Why did the spark with Arcanum? Luckey asked eagerly. Screw Zeus, she thought. The boy was hus now, regardless what master plan the old pervert had in store. She had found him, she had given him her blessing, she was going to be the one that was there for him. Not some lousy no-good god who abandoned his own grandson, dying to monsters. Zeus. As if she thought darkly. It's a living weapon, Loki. Something I had crafted long ago. Zeus had asked almost a millennia ago for this to be created for one of his greatest children. A child of old, a hero. Before the fauna or even Orario had existed the way it does now. Fitting that it would land in Bel's hands. Bellerophon, who now that I think about it, I'm sure Bel was named after one of the original Argonauts and slayer of the great beast, the winged death chimera. It's a weapon designed to grow with its wielder, gaining power and improving alongside its master. I thought it had been lost to the ages. Of course that old pervert still had it. Hephaestus said in wonder. Loki, entrapped by the words she was saying, could help but ask. A living weapon. What can it do besides grow? Is it good enough for Bel to use? Loki asked. She had heard of living weapons in fairy tales. Had even seen a knife similar once, yet she did not know exactly what their capabilities were. What did it mean that it would grow with its user? Listen, Loki, it's a weapon that is unbreakable, even more so than items created with the Durandal attribute. Never will it fail the boy, nor will it ever need to be maintained or worked on. It will fit his hands for as long as he wields them and will work for no other. Not until his death. I meant it when I said it would grow. Most adventurers need different weapons throughout their careers, either due to getting more skilled or stronger. Yet Bel will never have to worry about such a thing. Those gauntlets will continue to improve, so that when his body does, they will always be the perfect weapon, even able to channel magics and act as a focus for him, should he ever gain the ability to cast spells. Loki, these gauntlets, if we were to put a value on them, would easily surpass 600 million vials. Loki, jaw-dropping at the staggering amount. That was more vials than all the new weapons combined that she had just commissioned for her strongest children. 600 million vials. My God, she was going to beat into her little rabbit's head the seriousness of what he had. Here, take this, Loki, Hephaestus said, reaching out and handing a strange-looking ribbons. White in color, yet with a surprising strength to it. She noticed something odd about the lengths. Have your boy wrap these around his gauntlets until he's strong enough to defend them himself. It should disguise the appearance so none but him can make out the type of gauntlets he has. Hephaestus said, having guessed what Loki was thinking. The boy was going to need something to help him disguise his weapons. Hephaestus, I owe you one. Loki said, grinning. Owe me one. Then you can repay the favor now. Welf needs a companion to dungeon dive. Who better than the soon-to-be new rising star of the Loki familia? I know there's more to your brat than just his gauntlets. With the way your arm tightened on his shoulders at the start, or how you personally are so invested in the boy, you could have simply brought the gauntlets alone after all. Wait, Hephaestus, there is nothing special about Bel, I swear, Loki said now, slightly panicked and revealing too much to the goddess in front of her. Hephaestus saying nothing as she smirked at Loki, about to call out her bold-faced lie. At least, she was until they were interrupted with Bel and Welf entering the room behind them. Goddess, look. Welf was able to set me up with his armor. Isn't it great? Also, we're talked about things, and it looks like he's wanting to spend time in the dungeon as well. Can I form a party with him? Bel said, running up to Loki, grasping her hands in admiration, showing off his armor to Loki with his usual vigor and happiness. Loki, who had already proven weak to his cute charms, blushing as she patted him gently on his head. Yes, Bel. It looks great. I guess that's okay, Loki said, ignoring the thud-thunk of her heart as the child's smile shone with radiance, nodding once at Hephaestus, agreeing silently to the deal. She couldn't help but smile a bit at her new child's contagious happiness. Fuck. It would be good for him to have help in the dungeon, and Hephaestus was always trustworthy. Seemed her Bel had hit it off well with this Welf individual. Yet she needed to do something with him. Now that she realized how valuable he was, she couldn't just willy-nilly risk him in the dungeon on his own. No, she needed to find him a party, one that could help him in the early floors until he was strong enough to look after himself. But who could she reach out to? Loki wondered in contemplation as Bel and Welf continued their chats, discussing where they would meet tomorrow and their first official romp in the dungeon. Returning to the manor later that night, Bel and Loki side by side. Bel was surprised to find Loki leading him to a different section of the mansion than before. It seemed almost nicer and more upscale than the rooms they had used to imbue his fauna. Confused on where he was going, he couldn't help but ask, "Loki, where are we going?" Belle asked wonderingly. "I thought that room we were in early was to be mine." "Oh, that ole room? Nah, common kid, you're going where I can keep an eye on you. You'll be sharing with some room with the executives." Weldham and Lefia, another one of Loki's new children who she was sure would be a rising star, called the Thousand Elf, before Belle had come along, she had doubted to see someone with so much raw potential. No, better to keep both where Finn and Riveria can keep an eye on them. Originally, she was going to have Belle stay in the lower quarters. It made sense, since as a frontline fighter, he wouldn't be able to follow any of her stronger children's on expeditions. The only reason that Lefia could as a Mayazili level 3 was due to her magic. She could safely stay besides Riveria in the back line, casting her spells and leeching magic off of her mentor. That simply was not an option for Belle. Besides the fact that being level 1, but anyone lower than level 4 charging into the lowest parts of the dungeons, he'd be one shot by the first creature they ran across. No, it was good Belle was starting with Welf. Hopefully they could stay entertained on the beginner floors at least until she could talk more with Finn. Finn would have far better ideas on what to do with Belle, not to mention with his luck skill and gauntlets. He wasn't letting this boy out of her sight, except for when he went down into the dungeons. Ah well, sides maybe she could convince him to help her pick up chicks. Would be a lot easier if they were in the same quarters, he, Loki thought slyly to her self. Belle, unaware of exactly just what his goddess was thinking, was almost overwhelmed. It's not that the old room had been bad. Already it had been the nicest room he'd ever stayed in. Yet here, in these suits, Belle was scared to touch anything in case he broke something. "Well, Belle, my little good luck charm, here is where you're going to be staying. Now, tomorrow I'm going to be out and about, so I expect you and Welf to speak to your advisor before going into the dungeon. Do you hear me, Belle? You listen to everything and anything she says. Now, do you have any vials left?" "Yes, goddess. I will talk to Miss Aina with Welf before I go. I promise. And yes, the armor Welf gave me was only 9,000 vials, so I still have 6,000 on me." "All right then. I want you to find a support the entrance of the dungeon. Offer to split your total vials that you will earn as payment. Make sure Welf agrees it's important to have a support help you with looting, drops, and awareness of your surroundings. I don't want you to get in over your head, okay, Belle?" Loki said, starting at him, patting him repeatedly on the head as they walked in the upper levels. "Of course, goddess. Whatever you say." Belle, who was gazing up in admiration of Loki, took everything she said to heart. Holy, his goddess sure was knowledgeable, as expected of a goddess. Loki, who unbeknownst to Belle was simply just repeating the words that Finn always told new recruits, though she was sure that she was missing something. Oh well, whatever, she'd double-check when Finn was getting back. It shouldn't be too long. She was sure that Belle could stay out of trouble at the beginning, especially with his companion and newfound armor. "Anyways, Belle, this is where you'll be staying. You have an early day tomorrow and it's late. Get some rest and remember, do not show your gauntlets to anyone, even Welf, or whoever you get to support you tomorrow," she warned, pausing slight before she left him to the room alone. She decided to add on, "Come back safe, all right? You're my new good luck charm, so no foolishness tomorrow. Take things slow and take things safe, okay?" she said, mild concern showing. Wait, why would she be concerned? Belle wasn't a pretty girl with a huge rack, so what that he was unusual. She still had AIS and the rest of her executives. Yet, she had grown to care for the boy this quickly. Her the groping goddess claimer of 10,000 gropes. Dees, she was losing her edge. Or she thought, until she gazed down at the adoring Belle, wide-eyed, with wonder at his room, bowing so happily to his goddess. Damn it, he really was a cutie, wasn't he? She mumbled, saying goodbye to and good night as she left. If she had hugged him before she left, well, no one could prove it otherwise. Belle, once again so thankful for just how lucky his day had turned out, slowly took off his armor, unpacking his clothing as he got ready for bed. He couldn't help but think, "Grandfather, I can't help but feel you have been helping me from wherever you are. So, thanks for looking down on me And thanks for whatever it is you did to make me so lucky. I'm really happy, grandfather, and tomorrow. Well, tomorrow I start my adventure. Crawling into bed, it wasn't much longer before Belle drifted off to sleep. Dreamed filled with stories of heroes of old, as if almost a sign that it was his turn. Still, even though him and Welf had listened intently to Aina's advice, they had also gotten a supporter, a little Chienthrope support named Lily. He didn't know the dungeons would be like this. He said to himself, dashing in at a wolf, gauntlets newly wrapped in that special ribbon, hiding their effects. With a quick 1-2 punch, the wolf exploded in a pile of ash. Belle, who was still getting used to killing living creatures, was almost slashed by a second before Welf, who was swinging around his massive great sword, cleaved the monster in two. So far they had done surprisingly well, with Lily giving advice on how to best to harvest the crystals, as well solid directions, and intel about the type of creatures they would be fighting. Thinking back to things they sure had gotten lucky that she joined. Miss Aina, who had fully gone over what to expect down below, was now leading a more subdued Belle, and well, when they saw it, noticing a little Chienthrope supporter being asked to join her a party by an unpleasant-looking man. Long greasy hair and red dirty coat. The man had looked at her with malice, predatorily demanding her services. Belle, who didn't even notice before he intervened, had walked up to the group, grabbing the Chienthrope, who looked to be unsure, and saying, Sorry, we actually already booked this supporter. Here have 1,000 vials for your trouble." Belle, who pulled her behind him, offering the money to the man, who greedily snatched the bag before walking off to harass someone else. He didn't want to cause a fight so soon. Better to smooth things over from the money his goddess had left him. "Sorry, Miss Supporter, you looked like you were uncomfortable. I just couldn't help myself." For intervening. "My grandfather always said to help pretty girls in need," Belle said triumphantly, before blushing a deep scarlet, smoke coming out of his ears at what he just said. "Oh my God. I wasn't support to say that last part. Stupid grandfather, stupid lewd thoughts." The supporter, who was confused by the sudden turn of the events, couldn't help but stare at the rabbit-looking dork in front of her. Yet, at least he seemed nicer than the guys before. Still, she shouldn't ever get her hopes up. She knew how adventurers were, always treating her like crap, always taking the lion's share of the profit. Sighing to herself, it seemed like this was going to be her only choice today. If things really got dicey, she could always leave them to rot down below and escape. Besides, she needed to get vials, as she was already behind in paying the Soma Familia. Her familia? Well, the supporter asked, not quiet friendly. "Are you going to take responsibility and hire me today? You did just chase away my clients after all." The supporter said smugly. Maybe she could convince the doofus to give her a large portion of the profits from today. After all, most adventures refused to even share 10% with her. Fucking bastards as they were. Oh. Belle recovering from his embarrassment as Welf and Aina looked on in bewilderment. "Of course I need a supporter today anyways. My goddess told me to get one. So yes, I'll hire you." "Does a 3-way split between Welf and myself work?" "Belle, that's a lot higher than what most supporters are paid," Aina said worriedly, not liking the look of the little Chienthrope. "You sure, Belle? I don't mind, as this is your show. But there are other supports here," Welf said, wanting to ensure Belle thought through his options. The supporter, who had heard this all before, started to look down, slight tears forming on the edges of her eyes. Why did everyone treat me like shit? Why couldn't adventurers ever be good people? Huffing to herself and willing for the tears to fade. She wasn't going to show weakness to strangers. Fuck, what was she going to do about the money she owed? She began to leave before this Belle person spoke. "Of course, I'm sure Miss Supporter will be a great help. Besides, she looks like she could use a friend," Belle said, beaming. Both Aina and Welf smacking their foreheads at the nativity the boy was showing, and the supporter, who soon told them to call here Lily, couldn't help but gaze at him in shock. Was this guy an idiot? Yet despite Welf's reservations, he had been wrong about Lily. They had only been in the dungeon for an hour, and already they had made it to level 2. The biggest surprise was Belle. Sure, he was unrefined with his movements or attacks. Even still, his attacks had a surprising amount of power behind them. Welf had assumed the boy would be all speed and agility. Sure, the boy was fast and was agile, yet if anything he was strong too, throwing out punishing blows with his weirdly wrapped knuckle-bladed gauntlets. Welf had never really seen the like before, yet Bell used them well. They had progressed at an extremely fast pace. He had assumed they would spend the most of the day hanging around level 1, maybe just barely reaching 2. Yet here they were, already about 15 monsters down and onwards to next level. He had to admit him, with the supporter Lily covering their weaknesses with her crossbow, then grabbing the crystals while they rested. The three of them worked well. Thinking to himself he really was going to be able to reach level 2 and get the forge ability at a much faster rate than the thought. He had offered to join Bell, since it was very difficult to find a party. He just never would have believed at the ease the group was having. Taking a breather before moving on, fully rested they continued down, walking down a narrow corridor that snaked left and right. Choosing to go left, then soon found themselves facing a tight group of goblins. Not especially scary a foe, yet could be tricky in large numbers. Bell, having seen them first, launched at them with a gusto, using his speed to dart past a swinging stick the lead goblin had swung at him. He landed a vicious uppercut in the opening created by his dodge, not waiting to finish off the monster, trusting either Lily or Welf to finish things. Bell continued onwards, dashing into the stunned faces of the goblins behind the leader, with another 3 quick cracks of his knuckles slamming into vital areas. The monsters all puffed into smoke, drops falling on the floor, as Welf clashed with another great sword easily cleaving through the flimsy made axe the goblin had, making short work of the rest. Soon their area was filled with crystals galore. Wait, was that? Looking down, Welf noticed a rare drop, a goblin fang left behind by the group. Sure, they weren't overly rare or valuable, but still they fetched a few hundred vials. Damn, pretty lucky for them to have gotten any drops at all, not to mention on their very first outing. The group moved on, Lily efficiently grabbing the crystals and Fang surprise also showing on her face. Ah, Bell, I thought you were a novice. Didn't you say that today was your first ever trip in the dungeon? Welf asked. He had to make sure the way Bell was handling himself didn't not seem like a first-timer in the dungeon. Yep, that's right, Welf. Sorry if I'm screwing up anything. I'm starting to really get the hang of things, he said, grinning brightly. Huh, Lily exclaimed. You're moving way too good for being a first-timer. What familia are you a part of? Did you get some special training? A incredulous Lily asked, suspicion already forming on her face. Oh, well, I guess I shouldn't hide it from you. I'm from the Luckey familia. Bell said, deadpanned as he gazed over at his comrades. Lily, who had passed out in shock at the turn of events, didn't know how to handle things, while Welf was simply impressed. I guess that's what's expected out of one of the top familiars in Orario. Even their rookies were on another level. Bell, who was embarrassed, decided to lead on. Deeper and deeper they went, at least after Lily recovered from her shock. The 3 party members now stood, after having a long day of dungeon delving, staring at the loot in front of them. FFI 50,000 vials. Are we dreaming? The group asked in amazement, the 3 of them never seeing so much money before in their life. Lily, who was flabbergasted at the results, was even more shook when Bell, seemingly without a care, pushed over a full third of the vials towards her and Welf. Jumping excitedly, Bell had no idea of the internal struggle Lily was going through. The group, promising to meet tomorrow, left for the day, each going separate directions and off to home. Lily, however, was deep in though. She knew that there was no chance in hell she could sabotage this group. With Bell being a part of the Luckey familia, they would crush her in a heart beat if something bad had happened and it was her fault. She knew that even though Bell seemed to be genuine, that a lot of adventurers were absolutely ruthless, willing at times to destroy those beneath them without a moment's thoughts. Yet for the first time in days she had been able to easily pay off her familiar fees. Zani's glaring at her in contempt the entire time. She couldn't just give up this cash cow. She never heard of a supporter getting equal pay as the fighters of a party. At least she'd never personally experienced it until now. The lower-level groups were very dog-eat-dog. No, she needed to keep this up for as long as possible. In fact, a thought entering her head. She needed to make herself invaluable to Bell. Not many People would dare pick on a member of the most powerful familia in Orario, at least unless they were a part of the Freya familia or something. So if she made herself important to Belle, then maybe that protection would come towards her too. Yes, plan forming in her mind as she thought of the days to come. She was going to have to do whatever it took to make Belle need her, whatever it took. Welf, who after arriving home visited shortly with Hephaestus. He'd never tell anyone or her, of course, but he was madly in love with her. Yet him a mortal, and a foolish one at that. What could he ever have to offer to a goddess like her? Still he enjoyed the precious moments he spent in her company. It was extremely kind of her to always offer her valuable time with him, especially after he had made his childish and foolish claim that he would make weapons superior to magic swords. He admired her so, and she seemed to enjoy his stories as well, listening as he told her about his adventures with Belle. Belle, Welf thought. Man, was that kid a surprise. He was so innocent and naive. Yet he her inner strength or power, especially when fighting. He'd never seen a rookie pick up on things so well. There had been something strange with the boy as well, as if he was hiding something. Yet Welf knew already. He trusted Belle. The boy had a strange genuineness to him that was really difficult to ignore. If Belle was hiding something, then it was most likely for good reason. Besides, Welf was hiding something too. He wondered how Belle would react if he ever found out who the Crozos were. Well, Welf was starting to get fired up thinking about what exactly their adventures would bring. Not bothering to let his past or family history get him down, he started to work in his forge. A smith's work was never done. Speaking of which, Belle, who had returned happily to the Twilight Manor and was once again shirtless while Luckey updated his stats, was regaling his goddess about the fun and exciting adventure they went on. Luckey, amused by Belle's antics, was curious to see just exactly how much his luck skill would increase his overall stats. Once again the warm blue light of her arcanum revealing his updated abilities as she etched them onto the paper before her. Wait. The fuck? Belle Cranel. STRG 148. VITH 40. DEXG 115. AGIG 105. MAGI 0. Skill, Luck of the March Hare. Belle has greatly increased luck, gaining increased experience, growth, monster drops, and probability. This skill is affected by each increased level. This skill also gives Belle an increased chance to learn new skills at a greatly increased pace. No, it wasn't possible. In a single delve into the dungeon, Belle had gone up 2 ranks in strength, dex, and AGI, with 1 rank in vit. Had anyone in the history of adventurers ever skilled up so fast? Belle, once again oblivious to his deity's dilemma, only noticed when Luckey collapsed in a heap besides the bed. Goddess, are you okay? He asked in panic. Just what the hell was she going to do with this kid? Unreal, she thought, unsure what to think at the turn of these adventure. Chapter summary. No, it wasn't possible. In a single delve into the dungeon, Belle had gone up 2 ranks in strength, dex, and AGI, with 1 rank in vit. Had anyone in the history of adventurers ever skilled up so fast? Belle, once again oblivious to his deity's dilemma, only noticed when Luckey collapsed in a heap besides the bed. Goddess, are you okay? He asked in panic. Just what the hell was she going to do with this kid? Unreal, she thought, unsure what to think at the turn of these advents. Chapter notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. The early morning had Belle, who was on his way to meet with Welf and Lily, traversing merrily down the streets of Orario. Rushing about in an excited hurry, he failed to notice the pretty gray-haired young waitress that was just now stepping out in front of him. Whoa, look out, Belle said, surprising SYR and crashing into her. Frantically he moved his arms around the back of her head in an effort to prevent serious harm, not realizing that in doing so, he had put his face precariously level with her ample chest. Bumbling to the ground, his face cushioned by the heavenly mounds, Belle quickly rushed to his feet, apologizing and bowing repeatedly. Embarrassment obvious. Geez, why did he always seem to be crashing into people, he wondered lamely. Still, he wanted to make sure SYR was uninjured and not hurt. Miss SYR, are you okay? I'm so sorry, really truly, I am. I didn't mean to crash into you, and touch your boob chest. Please forgive me. Belle pleaded, falling to his hands and knees, prostrating himself before the lovely girl. Ryu, who had been slightly behind SRY, watched on in amusement. It was obvious that Belle hadn't done anything on purpose. That him landing on SYR's chest had simply been dumb luck, especially since he had tried to protect her from his own carelessness. Ow, Belle. That hurt. Try to be careful, please. SYR chided gently. Flush now obvious. To her face, she was embarrassed. Thinking back, she couldn't really ever remember being embarrassed before. Yet her heart now beating at rapid pace couldn't be denied. Still, better to use this opportunity to tease the boy. It was in her nature, Belle oblivious to who exactly she really was. As he continued his fitful apologies. Belle, if you wanted to feel them, you could have asked nicer. Honestly, young boys and their hormones. SYR, a scandalized Ryu said, shocked at boldness of her friend's words. No. I really didn't mean to miss SYR, honest. I just wasn't watching where I was going, in a hurry to get started on another dungeon adventure. I promise SYR, I'm so sorry. Teehee Belle, well I guess if you really didn't mean to, you'll just have to swing by later and grab a large dinner. Won't you, Belle? We haven't seen you since you left with Goddess Luckey. Now, that's not good, Belle. You shouldn't be ignoring your friends. SYR said, tongue sticking out in a childlike fashion. Yes. Miss SYR, I promise me and my party will stop by after. I'm sorry once. Again. Belle, who was now running late, dashed off in another hurry, unable to keep the redness off his face. Dang it, he really didn't know how to handle woman, regardless of all the instructions that his grandpa had given him. Amused, both waitresses watched the boy hurrying off into the distance, each sharing similar thoughts of QUT, though Ryu felt ashamed after turning to the mischievous gray-haired girl that was her friend. SYR, you shouldn't tease the boy so relentlessly, Ryu scolded. She loved SYR, but still. Sometimes Ryu didn't know where these things came from. Sweet, charming, and beautiful. SYR could at once minute be as innocent as a babe. Then the next could be teasing with innuendos that would make even some of the more experienced adventurers blush. Haha, sorry Ryu. There's just something about that boy that gets me excited. She said, putting on a pouting face towards her elven friend. Ryu, who had enough of her friends' antics, left her to continue on with her opening duties, readying the hostess for another busy day. If she had been paying attention a little more closely, she would have seen a very UNSYR-like look now showing on her friend's face. A almost haunting look, like a predator finding juicy prey. Belle, who rushed on, soon found both Welf and Lily casually waiting for him. He apologized profusely for being late, promising to be on time from that day onwards. He sure did say sorry a lot, he thought glumly. Welf, who had told him not to mind, and Lily, who had strangely enough grabbed his arm and held it closer to her, explained they hadn't been waiting very long. It wasn't such a big deal. So soon the trio found themselves continuing where they left off the day before. It wasn't long, however, before both party members stood stunned as Belle showed remarkable progress. Sure, he had impressed yesterday, but today, just how amazing was the Luckey FAMILIA? They wondered to themselves. While really he had improved so much. Again, especially since yesterday. Glancing at one another, they shrugged their shoulders. That's the Luckey FAMILIA for you. Neither ever having experienced what a first-class FAMILIA was like. Belle, who had been moving well, fist smashing directly into the chest of a kobold that had been foolish enough to face him. Welf dispatching his with comparative ease, while Lily brought up the rear. They had progressed at an ever greater pace than the day before. Already, having destroyed various monsters, and just now reaching the drop down to level 3. Checking that his companions were doing well, Belle lead on. Seeing that they were ready, only a short rested needed, they ventured on. Until Lily, having noticed movement above Belle, yelled out a shout in warning. Belle! Above! Look out, she cried, as Welf looked up to see what was going on. A dungeon lizard, a brown four-legged creature who had suction-like cups on its toes, dropped towards Belle, ambushing him with vicious maw open, biting attack unleashed. Belle leaped to the side, narrowly dodging the horribly fanged mouth. Readying himself, he darted inwards, back. Hunched in a combative stance, he unleashed a flurry of fists at the would-be sneak attacker. The lizard, who thrived on attacking by surprise, no match for the onslaught Belle dished. Black smoke and crystal falling, only for more of its brethren to fall down. Surrounding the party on all sides, Belle yelled with a mighty shout as the monsters and adventurers clashed. Lily, trying to point out any lizards who might still be on the ceiling, while also firing away, with her tiny crossbow, had her hands covered, trying to provide any and all support she could. Belle, who now stood shoulder to shoulder with Welf, darting into rain blows on the nasty lizards, using Welf's mighty swings as cover, pulling back to allow them to create space. They were doing well, and even though both he and Welf had sustained a few hits, nothing overly serious had happened yet, their armor shrugging off the minuscule blows as they plowed their way through. That is until Lily, so caught up on trying to spot any more would-be ambushes, failed to realize that on her side was another lizard lying in wait, camouflaged, its brown skin matching surprisingly well with the brown walls. She failed to see it until it had hurtled on top of her, pinning her to the ground, dangerous more snapping at her face. Lily desperately trying to avoid its vicious fangs. Belle, seeing the motion behind him, gasped in terror. "Lily!" he roared, summoning a burst of speed. He moved with all the skill he could muster, diving at the creature, who had still fortunately not taken a chomp out of the chinthrope. He crashed into it like a linebacker, ripping it off of Lily in tumble of limbs. Finally, his knack for running into things coming in handy, at least until the creature, who reacted by going berserk to the interruption of its food, flailed mightily, mouth latching onto the Belle's forearm, grunting in pain as the jaws crunched on his braces. Belle yanked back, trying to free his arm from the lizard's maw. He didn't notice little Lily, who had recovered quickly from the attack, at least until she jammed a dagger straight through the annoying and persistent lizard's eye, blood spurting out from the creature as it shrieked in pain. The blow, obviously mortal, soon had the lizard bursting into a cloud of dust. Belle, panting, at the turn of events, adrenaline pumping, readied himself for another attack. None came, Welf just finishing up the remaining creatures on his own without much need. Huffing in relief, Belle fell on his back side, shaking lightly at the close call the group had suffered. Lily rushing to his side, she grabbed his arm with a gentle touch, eyes roaming on his arm. "Belle, how bad is it? Let me see, move your arm okay. We need to get the wound cleaned and tidied to prevent infection." A frantic and worried Lily said, moving his arm this way and that, checking for damage. Belle, whose arm was hurting, yet not nearly as much as he thought it would, especially considering it had basically been used as a chew toy, looked instead at the little supporter. "It's okay, Lily. Are you injured? When I saw that horrible monster on top of you, I was so scared," he said in a whisper. Lily, who had now realized that thankfully, whether by skill or luck, Belle's armor held. The lizard's jaw had chomped directly onto Belle's bracer, the tooth marks clearly visible on the strongest parts of the metal. She shuddered to think of if it had only just been a few inches lower, his arm could have turned into a shredded pulpy ruin. "Let's take a breather here. Wasn't expecting to be ambushed so soon after entering level 3. Lily, I'm sorry I couldn't aid you like Belle did. I had to keep those others engaged so they didn't overwhelm us." Welf said, apology sincere towards Lily. "Hey, you guys aren't mad. The supporter is the one who's supposed to warn of danger to the main group. If I had been paying more attention, I could have seen them sooner. If I had just been a second slower of warning Belle, or hadn't been so distracted and gotten pinned by the one on the wall, nothing bad would have ever happened," she said, downcast. "Great job, Lily," she scolded herself. "How could you do something so stupid? Now both Belle and Welf are going to get a different supporter and I'll be late on my payments again." Internally berating herself, she didn't notice the confused looks on Belle and Welf's faces. Miss Lily," Belle said quietly, waiting for Lily to turn her gaze towards him. "If it wasn't for you, Welf and I would be totally hopeless. Neither of us have tons of dungeon experience, so you've been an amazing help." "Sides," he said, Belle's trademarked smile shining brightly on his face. "It's the party's responsibility to look out for one another. Neither Welf and I had noticed the lizards either. Your shout had given me enough time to dodge, and you only missed the lizard on the wall because of how much you were supporting us with your crossbow. Not to mention we both seem to be okay. Let's just count ourselves lucky and be more vigilant as a group moving forwards." "Okay," Belle finished, hand reaching towards her palm open, a sign of friendship and understanding. Yeah, Lily, when we first met you, I had my doubts, but boy, you sure have proven me wrong. Don't mind the small stuff. Sides, I knew my trusty armor would keep Belle safe, Welf added. Lily, who for the second time in 2 days, was speechless. Never before had a party treated her with such respect and caring. Tears forming in her eyes, yet not falling, she nodded and hummed in agreement, hood falling onto her head from the motion, hiding just how touched she was about everything from the 2 clueless men. Maybe, just maybe, she had found people who were different. Maybe they were not the same as all the other jerk adventures who had treated her so poorly. Hope bubbling in her chest for the first time in a long while. She continued on with them, none of them needing any first aid or more help. Finished with their rest, Lily hoped that this was simply a sign of things to come. Onwards they progressed, the party of 3. Far more aware of their surroundings, they plowed on. No more close calls, and even an extremely rare sighting of a jackbird. A rare monster that looks like a rooster with fluffy yellow-green feathers. It wasn't aggressive and it didn't attack. Yet it sure was fast. Belle and Welf, who rushed after it, gave up only moments later, realizing that they had no chance on catching the elusive bird. A shame too, as the strange monster had a guaranteed drop item of a single golden egg, worth roughly 1,000,000 vials. All 3 of them had despaired at not being agile enough. Depressed, they made their way onward, already claiming more crystals than they had yesterday. They breezed past floor 4 and quickly found themselves on floor 5. Wandering through, having just defeated 3 killer ants, they decided to rest again, catching their breath, ensuring that there was no injuries. Weapons in good working order, until they heard it. A strong bellow echoed all around them, the 3 immediately jumping alert, unsure of what kind of monster could make such a tremendous howl. Until they saw it, a hulking figure, lumbering through the tunnel. Tan-brown skin, furred legs ending in blacker than night. Hooves, giant horns, and a terrible snarl on its bull-like face. It noticed the 3 adventurers. Snuffling and howling, once again the beast charged, power rippling in its muscles as it launched itself at them. A minotaur. This is only level 5. Just what the hell is it doing here? Lily screamed, panic on her face. We have to run. Now, she yelled. Only it was took late. The bull who had charged at them caught them flat-footed. Powerful. Head smashed into Welf, the force of the blow launching him into a nearby wall. Bone. Snapping force, as his limp form hit the wall, moving. Lily, who fared no better, caught with a crushing hoof, lashing at her with lightning quickness, blood spurting from her mouth, as the foot impacted into her stomach, crumpling in a similar horrifying manner as Welf. Only Belle, who as if by sheer chance had darted to the side, dodging the monstrous creature. The bull charging past only millimeters from hitting Belle in the quick exchange. Horridly he looked on at his party, unsure of if they were even alive. Terror gripped him, turning to run from the scene, heart beating faster than he had in all his life. He stopped as his grandfather's words gripped him. Belle, never leave your comrades behind. It's a sad existence to leave friends or loved ones to perish. Take it from me, even if you physically survive from such a loss, mentally you'll waste away. Regret filling you until you wish the past wasn't so. Sides, if you are able to come out ahead. Just think of how thankful any pretty girls might be when you didn't leave them behind. He. His grandfather was right. How could he just leave things like this? How could he call himself an adventurer if on his second delve to the dungeon he left behind his precious friends? All the great heroes in the stories stood up the horrible odds. Couldn't he? Didn't David destroy Goliath? Sure, the Minotaur wasn't a giant, yet his situation seemed similar. Stealing himself. He forced his brain to think. Few precious seconds had passed by, as the Minotaur was turning his now red gaze at him. He couldn't stay here with the creature. His friends could get trampled or caught in the cross fire. No, he needed to lure the monster away, summoning all the courage that he could muster. Belle steeled himself, reaching down for a rock. He threw it at the monster. Bouncing harmlessly off its thick skull, the bull's glowing red eyes latched onto Belle. With another mighty Oh. The Minotaur charged. Only this time, Bell launched himself away, like a bunny rabbit running from a predator. Thankfully, Bell realized he was just as fast as the lumbering behemoth behind. Not that it did him much good. He knew eventually that one of them would get exhausted. He just hoped that his stamina would hold out first. Peering back, ensuring the raging bull was still on his tail, yelping, and adding another burst of speed. Oh shit, yep, still there. He thought to himself grimly. He only hoped that maybe on his mad dash he could get assistance from this surreal situation. Continuing the pace for what seemed like hours, yet only minutes had passed. Bell, not paying much attention to where he was, darted down a corridor, hoping that, if he happened to put some distance, maybe he could lose the monster in the now twisting and narrowing path. Bell, who was roughly half a minute ahead of the Minotaur, stumbled through an opening. Before he noticed his mistake. Oh no, what have I done? He looked around in fear. I'm screwed, he thought. It was a medium-sized circular room. Yet that wasn't what had filled him with dread. It was a dead end. Oh fuck. Of all the times for his luck to run out, now was the time. With only seconds to think, he looked back towards where he came. Could he squeeze past the creature during one of the twists? No, it was far too cramped. The monster would notice, and Bell being forced into such an area would have been a sitting duck to the monster's attack. Staring as his cruel fate drew nearer, gauntlets at the ready. Well, if today was to be his last day, then he'd go down swinging. Bell thought to himself grimly, trying to calm his shaking body, slight exhaustion from running his mad dash away from his tormentor. He watched as the Minotaur emerged into the room, nostrils flaring, flecks of blood and lather dripping down its chin, fur slick with sweat as it had been forced to charge long distances after the slippery rabbit. Finally, after cornering its prey, it launched himself once again, roaring that terrible noise. Dark muscular hand thrown at Bell with tremendous force. Ducking, barely avoiding what felt like a lethal blow, Bell returned the favor. Fist one and then two rocketing into the creature's belly, the second hitting the throat. Seemingly unfazed, the Minotaur responded, horns glinting in the dim light, as it head-butted Bell, trying to gore or smash the puny boy into the dirt. Bell's agility once again winning the day as he narrowly avoided, darting swiftly to the side, starting to flank the lumbering creature. Yet as with all things, he wasn't perfect, and his inexperience now started to show. He had forgotten a very important thing. Heck, he had even seen it when poor Lily was swatted like a bug. An enormous leg rocketed out, hoofed foot leading as it crashed into Bell. The bull had mule kicked him, shattering his armor as if it was flimsy plastic. The breath flung from him as flew into the unyielding stone behind, blood trickling from his mouth at the impact, now struggling for all his worth, trying to breath. Winded, sure that he had taken serious damage. Bell watched as the Minotaur righted itself, surging towards him again, merciless in its hunt. Bell, who hadn't recovered fully, flung himself in a disorganized roll, body protesting as he went, grunts of pain from moving in his injured state. He miraculously dodged the horns as the Minotaur crashed into the stone wall, exactly where he had been. Luckily, it seemed dazed, the Minotaur stumbled off balance. Bell, using everything he had left, got up and attacked. Right, then left again, and all of his strongest punches hitting the creature. Sadly, the blows, while leaving small marks, was not enough to rip through such strong hide. Two hulking arms engulfed Bell, crushing him to the monster's chest, his remaining tattered armor clanging to the floor as the vicious creature started to squeeze. Zero remorse or concern on the hideous bull-like face. Bell, who could feel his ribs buckling under the pressure, frantically started resisting, trying to pry off the horrible pressure he now felt. Pain that the young boy had not experienced ever before. He knew that this was it. His breaths becoming shallower, vision fading, death starting to welcome him as an old friend. Bell, again his grandfather's voice carrying to him now, even through his dimming eyes. You must never give up. Being a hero is not an easy path, filled with frights and harsh lessons. Yet, I truly know you can do it. You're my boy after all. Make me proud, Bell. Show the world what it means to be a hero. Hearing his grandfather, as if he was there with him. Bell, who still couldn't breath, helpless as he was. Yet a clear, strong thought entered the boy. No, I can't be defeated here. Not after meeting Loki, Welf, Lily, Aina, and so many more. Finding the very last of his strength, and using the bladed tip of his gauntlets, Bel smashed down with all his might. A splitting shriek of pain as it pierced the monster's hide. The first time since they had began, the Minotaur had been hurt by Bel's doing. Blood pouring in gurgling spurts from the grisly wound. With a frenzied jerk, he twisted the gauntlets with all his worth, shredding the forearm of one of the muscled arms holding him, collapsing to the ground complete. Exhaustion threatening to overwhelm him, Bel stared in determination at the bull. "Take that, you fucker," he thought, trembling, trying to do anything with his body. Utterly spent, and having used his last Herculean effort, Bel watched in an almost cold detachment as the Minotaur raised its hoofed foot, ready to crush the stupid boy who had hurt it so. No, there was so much I wanted to do, so much more I wanted to accomplish. Tears filling his eyes as he thought of all the people he failed. He tried, really tried, oh goddess, he prayed. If I live through this, if I should somehow survive, never again will I feel so helpless, never again. Would he lose? He promised to fight with all his worth in the days to come. If only he had more time, Bel thought, wistful. Before a dark-skinned beauty jumped in front of Bel, long flowing black hair cascading gracefully behind her. Fist striking out so fast Bel didn't even register, the beast hurtled across the room, as if he was nothing but an insect, swatted out of the sky. At first Bel thought his mind was playing tricks on him. His grandpa's perverted gaze as looked on at the breathtaking woman. This beautiful woman was wearing a bikini top, breasts fully on display in all their delicious wonder. Was he hallucinating? He wondered, pain-filled, heaving breaths racking his body as he stared. He had to be dreaming, right? No one that beautiful would randomly save him, let alone so easily and without a care in the world. Woozily he tried to cement her features into his brain, marveling at her smooth skin, powerful frame, and graceful curves. "Tiona, he's hurt badly," the wondrous woman said, concern filling her features as she gazed at the blooded and battered boy. Sheesh, how unlucky could this kid get? Tyon thought. Sadly, running into a random Minotaur at level 5 of all things. Poor kid, he'd be kinda cute. Well, if he wasn't covered in blood and looking like 10 miles of bad road, the newcomer noted. Yo, got it, Tyon. Oh, Mr. Kawa? You've been a naughty boy. A second amazingly beautiful dark-skinned woman responded. Every bit the first one's equal, yet with a childlike joy and exuberance. Only just barely could Bel see her, his vision getting darker and darker. She had short, stylish hair, and what was she wearing? Was that tube top? Geez, he must be dreaming, letting his grandfather's stories get to him, all those lewd stories causing the young man to invent beautiful storybook saviors. Still he watched on in amazement, having difficulty on choosing which beautiful figure to start at. Longingly, he sighed, deciding to focus on just breathing, difficult as it was, ragged breaths still causing blood to drip down his chin. One of the very last things he saw, the gorgeous woman, walk up to the bull, completely and unafraid. The bull itself, obviously stunned and hurt at having been smashed away, bellowed at the new challengers. Rearing down into a full crouch, the Minotaur charged at the short-haired beauty. Bel, who wanted to scream a warning, tell them not to get hurt on his part, and praying to the gods before he lost consciousness that she would be okay, was granted a vision, as if almost Bel was in a trance. The girl effortlessly dodged a blow that would have killed Bel instantly. Then, deciding on something truly insane, the woman latched onto its horns, hands holding each one as she did. A handstand of sorts. Legs, high above the bull, showing off her wondrous body. With an almost too simple twist, the bull's neck snapped, the girl having turned the bull's head in an almost complete 180 degrees, dispatching the creature that had defeated him, with no more difficulty than one would an ant. Bel, unable to handle anything more, already long past the time he should have been out cold, only felt himself hoisted up onto the softest and warmest cloud he had ever felt, tucked safely behind Tyon, with a determined Tiona ensuring nothing was left behind. The two adventurers raced down the tunnel. They had to get the boy back to Riveria ASAP, or he might just not make it, especially when they had seen just how great of a fight this little rabbit-like boy had put up. If only he or they had a healing pot. Didn't the boy know how foolish it was to traverse the dungeon without it? Cursing, the Amazonians flew down the corridors, precious cargo safely, held in Tyon grasp. Didn't anyone tell him to bring one as preparation? God, what kind of idiot god would send their new adventurer down into the dungeon without the basics? They prayed to their goddess that he would be okay. It had been their fault the Minotaur escaped. After all, Loki, who had been twiddling her thumbs getting drunk while waiting for either Belle or the expedition, sneezed abruptly, unaware of the sister's horrible thoughts. Oh, Loki thought to herself, was someone talking about me? She wondered. Ah well, she hoped Finn would come back soon. For some strange reason she just couldn't figure out what she had forgotten to give Belle. She knew it was important, but after 2 days the thought escaped the fickle goddess. Oh well, this wine sure was great. She happily sipped, unaware that her newest familiar's life was disastrously close to ending. Chapter end notes. Thanks for all the positive comments, everyone. Really appreciate you taking the time to give feedback. Apologies for the short chapter. Just honestly felt like the best time to end this one. Tiona and Tyon finally arrive. Smiley face. Revelations. Chapter summary. Loki, who had been twiddling her thumbs getting drunk while waiting for either Belle or the expedition, sneezed abruptly, unaware of the sister's horrible thoughts. Oh, Loki thought to herself, was someone talking about me? She wondered. Ah well, she hoped Finn would come back soon. For some strange reason she just couldn't figure out what she had forgotten to give Belle. She knew it was important, but after 2 days the thought escaped the fickle goddess. Oh well, this wine sure was great. She happily sipped, unaware that her newest familiar's life was disastrously close to ending. Chapter notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Tyon, now covered in the boy's blood, was almost flying down the corridors. She was no beat. Or AIS, still being level 5, both Amazons could move when they wanted to. The Amazons were extremely concerned about the poor boy. It was their fault that the Minotaurs had escaped from the bottom floor. They especially had been fooling around, having fun, destroying the Minotaurs with ease. They were first-class adventurers, long past having to take the bull creatures seriously. Their frivolity about the situation may have just caused a familiar to lose one of their family members. If the boy's wheezing, hacking, blood-filled breaths were any indication, unsure if the boy was fully conscious or even now could be succumbing to his injuries. Obviously level 1, the boy had made desperate last stand. The Amazons had only seen the very end of the confrontation, Belle jabbing the pointed ends of his gauntlets into the Minotaur's flesh, just before the horrid beast crushed him. Poor kid, Tyon thought. He didn't seem to be that much younger than her or her sister. Still, it was just sheer dumb luck that he, of all people, would get trapped by a creature that had no business being on the 5th floor. Hey Tyon, is he doing okay? He was just like one of those heroes in the stories. Like David when he fought against Goliath. Don't you think? Poor little hero, getting smushed like that. You think he's going to be okay? An excited Tiona said, jumping beside Tyon as she ran. Hush now, Tiona. We need to find Riveria. I think she was with those other adventurers we found. The ones who told us that their companion had been missing after being attacked by the Minotaur. Tyon chided gently. The red-haired youth they had found had told them about the situation before passing out himself from his injury. Not to mention he loved his sister to bits, yet sometimes she was a bit of airhead. The boy on her back, letting out another wheezing breath, brought them back to reality. Both Amazons looking at him quickly before they ran, determination in their gazes. Damn it, where was Riveria? There, Tyon said in a mad rush, finally seeing the green-haired elf with the commander, and Gareth, standing over the very same red-haired young man who had warned them. Tiny, Chienthrope besides him, both obviously injured. Riveria, help, he needs healing. We were too late and is badly injured, Tyon said, rushing over as she turned the poor boy to her front, coddling him to her as she tried to set him down gently. Unusual concern in her eyes, or so Loki, Find, and Gareth thought. Damn, his ribs are broken, might be internal bleeding. This is going to need a major recovery spell, Riveria said, frown on her face as she looked at the boy. Do it, Riveria. We owe it to any of the adventurers caught up in our foolish mistake. Tyon, Tiona, you stay here while we gather up AIS and beat. They can't have gone far. Finn said in a commanding tone, one that made Tyon shiver. She had always had a thing for the captain, constantly professing her feelings towards the heroic Paolum. Yet he had made it very clear. He just wasn't interested in her, much to her own heartbreak. Tiona had been subject to her. Many tears on the situation, only now being mostly over it. Still the tugs on her heart had been there. At least he was honest, she had thought. Light of the forest, great nature surround us, heal with your flowery grace. Goddess of love, goddess of life, guide this one back. My name is ALF. Los Hilos. A warm green light filled the surrounding area, brining Tyon back from her thoughts, as a curious Tiona looked on. The boy's pain-filled look fading to a more peaceful slumber. Both Amazons couldn't help but a single thought filing their head. Cute. He kinda looked like a rabbit. Riveria. Is he going to be okay? Tiona asked. At this moment he still needs more healing than I can provide. He might be out of the woods, metaphorically, but is still badly wounded. I have neither the spells or healing magic to return him to normal condition. A stern-faced Riveria said, looking down at the boy. Regardless, we should be bringing these adventurers home. Bring them home. Why do we care about these loser little weaklings? It's not our problem. Enamor Beat said, just now entering the spot with AIS, Gareth, and Finn. Oh, shut up, you mangy mutt. Tiona said angrily at the brash werewolf. Hey, did I say anything wrong, you flat-chested airhead? He responded harshly, only for Tyon to appear behind him. Anger very much visible on her face, fast cocked back, ready to slam home until. That's enough. All of you. Beat, I've been very clear on my feelings about this and you will listen. Gareth, take him home now. Since he can't behave, the rest of us will handle things. Here. Finn said, steely tone in his voice leaving zero room for argument. TSK, Beat said, at least before the strong bulky dwarf form of Garth grabbed the werewolf by the front of his chest and started pulling. Hilariously, Beat's tall form was forced to awkwardly follow since the dwarf had an iron-strong grip, not to mention being a full level head of Beat, didn't leave the grey-haired man much options. Let's go, you foul-mouthed wolf. I have mead to drink, and need to rest these old bones after our expedition. Shut your trap, I'm not as understanding as Finn, the boulder-like dwarf rumbled towards the werewolf. Beat ears back as he had no choice but to follow. We're wasting time here. We need to get the boy over to the Dien sect Familia, at least to get him checked out, Finn said. Riveria, you take the boy. I'll take the Chienthrope and AIS. Take the boy. Finn said swiftly. He didn't think that they all needed help from the legendary healing Familia. Just the boy, really. Still, it was no use staying put. Riveria had done all she could. Tyon, Tiona, you'll cover the front. Obviously we don't have much to fear from these lower levels. Still best to ensure that we clear the way. Boss? Mind if I take the boy? He was pretty cool earlier, and sides Tyon got to carry him, so it's my turn. Tiona said, pouting. AIS, indifferent about the situation, moved to take the front, Tyon and her more than ready to lead the charge. Finn, who nodded in agreement at the situation, picked up his cargo. It didn't take long for the first-class team to reach the top floor of the dungeon and the guild hall itself. Thankfully, besides the three, not too many other adventures had been caught up. A few here or there, nursing minor injuries. As annoying as Beat can be, him and AIS were some of the fastest in all of Orario. Even in the Freya Familia, it was unknown if any could actually match their top speeds. So they had managed to catch most of the Minotaurs before anything serious had happened. Only really Bell and his group had such a terrible outcome. The procession made their way through the main hall, the group only stopping when a beautiful young half-elf yelled, Bell! What's wrong? Is he okay? Is he hurt? He only started to be adventurer 2 days ago. What happened? Aina said, panic gripping her as she looked at the boy covered in blood, armor in tatters, worry etched on her features. Miss Advisor, do you know this boy? He sadly got tangled up with a Minotaur on the 5th level. Do you know his familia? Finn asked. Why, yes, but is he okay? Welf and Lily are here too. Are they going to be all right? Aina said, strain on her voice. These two are okay. Simply knocked out. If you give them a place to rest, they should be fine. Once they wake up, we used 2 potions on them. Riveria said, pointing towards Welf and Lily. I'll let Hephaestus know, as Welf is registered under that familia. Lily, I'm not sure who she's under since she is a supporter. We have a private room you can leave them in. But what about Belle? I won't lie to you, Miss Aina. The boy was in critical condition before I was able to heal him. He's still in rough condition but should be out of mortal danger. Now do you know the answer to Finn's question? We need to take him to the Dien sect familia to have his injuries better tended. I am well, he's a part of the Luckey familia. Aina said timidly to the group, stunned. Expressions all around at the turn of events. Luckey, who was drunker than a skunk, was minding her own business staring out her balcony, when she saw Gareth and a whining Beat being dragged forcibly, smiling to herself and, always down for some amusement at the expense of her familia, she stood and headed towards where they would enter. Deciding to meet the two together, she started to wonder to herself where the others were. Lecherous grin on her face as she imagined fondling the chests of the well-endowed familia she luckily had. Heading down the stairs, it wasn't very long before she was close enough to hear the two members of her familia. Gareth, we're here, let me go, you old fuck. Beat said, petulant voice coming through clearly, in Loki's drunk haze. So what if I made fun of the adventurers that got injured? Pathetic weaklings they are. He went on. Luckey, who took a few seconds to understand what he was saying. Was there injuries in her familia? Beat would never say that about the core group. Still, Luckey hoped that Raoul and Lefia were okay, and her various other lower-leveled family members. Frowning to herself, she stumbled towards the door. Beat, I'm too old and too tired to listen to your whinging. Finn was right, and it was our responsibility to look after the group since they got caught up in our mess. Bah, if you weren't being such a brat, you'd realize that too. No, stop your yapping. If I hadn't have yanked you out of there, the two Amazonians would whooped your ass up and down that floor. Especially since for whatever reason they were worried about that bunny-looking boy. Faye. Enough too, cause of his injuries. Gareth said gruffly. What? Luckey thought. No, it couldn't be Belle. He would have been nowhere near the floors that her familia's expedition would have been on. Had to be someone else, just a weird coincidence. She said, shaking her head, trying to clear the alcohol out of her system. Finally reaching them after groggily bumbling down the stairs. Luckey was about to throw her arms around the two when Beat continued. Look, that kid basically looked like a tomato, covered in blood as he was. All banged up, unable to deal even with a simple minotaur. Yeah, sure, you're right that maybe we shouldn't have let a few get away. Sides, what kind of a dumbass doesn't just retreat the way they came? The dumb goof didn't even have a potion on him. How amateurish can you get? Sides, we could use a little less of the dead waste in our way. Beat, still seeming to not understand the dwarfs' words, continued on petulantly. Rabbit-looking loser it was too. Probably had no idea what he was doing. He's most likely gonna get himself killed down there anyways. Not like the world would be missing much. Him and stupid white hair and ruby eyes. Beat continued. Bait, if you don't seriously shut your yap, I'm gonna give you at ass whoopin' that tie on. Would've. I'm over this. Oh, goddess, didn't see you there, Gareth said, turning towards Luckey, who had been just standing there mouth open as she heard what her familia was saying. Fuck, it was Belle, white hair, red eyes. New to the dungeon. How could this have happened? And Beat was here insulting his own familia. Luckey was easygoing about most, but this was not one of them, she said, storming over to oblivious werewolf. Oh, Luckey, didn't see you there. Wait until we tell you about the expedition we kicked some major ass down the dash. Slap. Goddess Luckey. Beat said, caught off guard by a vicious slap from his goddess. Gareth, who had been about to give Beat a swift kick in the ass, looked on in confusion. Luckey was many things, yet she didn't really get upset too often. What could have caused her to react this way? What happened? Is the boy okay? Where is? Tell me everything. Luckey said, now gripping the front of Beat's armor and clothes, pulling the shocked adventurer to her normally amused and silly expression gone with a fierce and angry one instead. Beat didn't think he'd ever seen his goddess angry like this. We got ambushed by about 24 minotaurs. Some escaped as we were cleaning them up. A unlucky adventurer and his party got caught up in it. Beat, being his usual self, was insulting the poor boy. Gareth said with a bit of annoyance in his tone at Beat. Still debating. That kick always did loud mouths a world of good. If Beat went through a few walls, well, shit happens. The boy, describe him to me. How bad was he injured, Gareth? Luckey said, now staring at Gareth. Shrugging, he went on with a description. Young boy, middle teens, with hair and ruby red eyes. Had black and silver amour, and some kind of fist weapon wrapped in ribbon. He said, fingers on his chin as he watched the flickering emotions on Loki's face. Dismay being the most prevalent. As for injuries, when Tyon and Tiona found him, he was in rough shape. Damn boy had fought off a minotaur from how the Amazons tell it. Still, I'm not sure he was the winner of that fight. His armor was destroyed and he was in mortal danger. Luckily, Reveria was able to stabilize him, and Finn has decided to bring him to the Dien sect for extra healing. Who is this boy? I'm not used to seeing you invested in anyone unless they're female with ampule bosoms. Gareth finished. Mortal danger. Holy shit, just how badly was he injured? She knew deep down it wasn't her fault. Well, besides not having a potion. Okay, maybe some of it was her fault. Still, the kid was supposed to be frickin' lucky. How does that end up working out to him facing a fucking minotaur on his second day into the dungeon? Looking back at things, she knew she should have tried harder to remember what she was forgetting. Fuck, it should have been obvious to her. A goddamn potion, multiple even, was needed to add to his adventurer's kit. Meaning to ask Finn what it was, only now to realize how much it could have cost her. Potions were pretty miraculous things, able to heal a variety of injuries. Obviously there were things you couldn't heal with them, but they were great in providing instant fixes that most often could it out of tricky situations. They weren't even that expensive. Oh sure, the high-end ones were, but most adventures could afford a few relatively easily. If Belle had been so critically injured, a potion would have certainly come in handy at one point. Damn it, she hadn't worried so much about the situation because of his luck skill. Not to mention it was pretty unusual to have a party of 3 for the first few floors. Goddess, both adventurers who had been trying to get her attention, glancing now at one another while their goods stood motionless. Sure, she was drunk, but this was not like her at all. Worry gripping at her chest, she rushed off, with beaten Gareth left staring at her abrupt departure, worried on how uncharacteristic this was of their goofball goddess. Deciding to see what was wrong, they chased after her into the night. Belle, whose consciousness was returning, groggily he tried to open his eyes. Lying on a incredibly soft mattress, he tried to bolt up the dungeon. WELF? Lily. Were they okay? Fear fully gripping him. I only partially open, tired and sore as he was. Easy there, little Argonaut. You're safe and your friends are safe too. A bubbly, excited voice said from somewhere to his side. He struggled to understand the words, in his groggy state, once more trying to sit up until a pair of incredibly strong hands held him down. Looking for the first time at his surroundings, the first thing he saw was BBB boobs. As the dark-skinned gorgeous woman stared down at him, long hair pooling around her shoulders as her glorious figure stood out in full view. Whoa, easy there. You've been badly injured. Let's not make things worse until the healers say you're safe, okay? The beautiful woman said, concern on her face. Yeah, little Argonaut. What Tyon said. Man, you trying so hard to stop that minotaur was so cool. We only really caught the end, but it was pretty awesome. A second beautiful woman said, shorter hair and similar in appearance. Argonaut, I'm just Belle. Do you have me confused with someone? He asked shakily. It was difficult to speak, yet his pain was nowhere near what it was before. Yeah, like the heroic stories. You remind me of those stories I heard when I was younger. Seeing you try so hard. Well, it was awesome. Tiona said, fist rising in the air, unable to control her excitement. You're the beautiful woman who saved me. I don't really remember much, but how did you defeat the minotaur so easily? I tried so hard and could barely even hurt the thing till the end. I felt like it was simply toying with me. He said, first in wonder, then in a bitterness of remembering his hellish struggle to live, shuddering at how easily the monster had all but crushed him. Sorry. I'm Tyon, and that dunder head over there is my sister Tiona. To be honest, it's our fault you got caught up in things. As to how we were able to defeat the minotaur. Well, I mean, it's not that difficult for level 5s. YA. What Tyon said. The Amazons chorused. So this was what a first-class adventurer was, Belle thought. Oh, he'd heard the term throne around casually, especially since being here to Orario. Yet seeing their grace and power, how? Tyon was able to send a hulking mass like the Minotaur flying across the room with little to no effort. Then having Tiona, with a casual ease grabbing its horns and almost ripping its head off. He never would have believed it unless he experienced it firsthand. The difference between them was staggering, those two shining beacons on what it means to be an adventurer. If only he could be like they were amazing. I can't thank you two enough. Honestly, you saved me and my friends. There is nothing I can do to repay that. Still, thank you truly from the bottom of my heart. Tears lightly forming. On the edges of his eyes he looked at his two saviors. Tiona blushed with Tyon, who was also surprisingly had a little of red on their cheeks. Once again, couldn't help the first thoughts entering their minds was cute. Look, don't mention it. Like we said, it was our fault anyways. We had been coming home from our expedition and had let a few of those assholes escape. So it's on us, not to mention. We're part of the same familia. It would have been a shame if we had lost you before getting to know you. Tyon said, once again showing more kindness than normal. It's not that she was normally unkind or anything, just she tended to be a lot more aggressive than she let on. In trying to be Finn's ideal woman, she had temporarily put on an act of mature and calm woman. Yet ever since he had rejected her, old Tyon had come back in force. Easy to provoke and a temper that most couldn't believe. Isn't it exciting, little Argonaut? Now we can spend a heap of time getting to know one another. Don't you worry, me and Tyon will show you the ropes. Well, when we're not busy, but like we can totally teach you so many things. Tiona added in with her usual exuberance. Belle started to feel warm inside. These Amazons were everything he was hoping to be. Strong, smart, powerful, able to do anything and everything they pleased. He hoped one day that he could stand on equal footing with such amazing people. He sure was lucky to share a familia with them. Thud-thunk, his heart beating fast. Blush obvious on his face as he started at the two girls. Was this love? It was certainly admiration, he knew that much. Yet, for the first time since coming to Orario, he cared more for being able to stand with these two women, or at least to be worthy of the recognition and worthy of the familia they share, than he did about becoming a hero his grandfather had told him about. That wasn't like him. Yet he couldn't bring himself to care, and for the first time since waking up he grew a huge happy smile. Yes, I look forward to it. I'm in your care, Belle said warmly at his saviors. Unbeknownst to him, both Amazons had their hearts also beat a bit, looking at this charming boy's smile and his heroic adventure he just had. It couldn't be helped. How could they not feel a warmness in their chest for him? Sharing smiles with one another, all three happy at the turn events were surprised by a loud clunking and bang. Luckey, who had finally made it to the healers, had rushed past Finn and Riveria. In her stupor she couldn't keep her balance as he reached the door. Tripping nosily, she slid until her nose smacked into the frame, which slowly creeped open to reveal the intoxicated goddess. Limbs akimbo, struggling to get up, slurred speech following. Ow, she said, rubbing her nose, until she noticed Belle. Belle. Luckey, now ready to jump at the boy in happiness that he seemed to be healing and, well, didn't notice an extremely angry Riveria, who, embarrassed by her goddess' silly antics, grabbed the back of Loki's top, preventing her from going anywhere at the moment. The goddess floundered, confused and unsure what exactly was going on, at least until she felt a sharp pinching as her ear was twisted. Tears filling her eyes, she looked towards the tormentor. Riveria. Luckey whined. OW, doing her best to prevent Riveria twisting it too far. Belle, who had an incredulous voice on his face at the turn of events. The rest of the Luckey familia watching on in amusement. It's not like this was unusual after all. Sometimes Riveria had too. Well, let's just say keep in her check. AIS peering in at the scene. Blank expression on her face. HHMMM, she hummed, watching event unfold in front of her. Luckey, you are acting far too crazily about this situation. You need to keep things down. You can't just come charging through someone else's property, causing a scene and disturbing people no matter how worried you are. Belle is in safe hands here. Tyon and Tiona will look after him, since them seemed to have taken a likening to him. Finn said, tone weary at his goddess antics. Yes, and while we do, how about you explain to Gareth Finn and I how you recruited someone without our knowledge? Then, you can explain how you let one of your newest familiar members go diving in the dungeon without our training or guides. Not to mention the fact that he obviously did not have any healing potions with him. A cold, an angry Reveria now towered over Luckey. Luckey said, trying desperately to run into Belle's room to be saved by the Nine Hells elf herself. That name wasn't just for show. How many times had she been chastised by the green hair elf? Belle, save your goddess. Save me. She cried after being pulled back. Come along everyone, we need to report about the expedition and then the executives need to discuss things with our goddess. Finn, no mercy in his tone as they dragged a wailing and nails dragging across the floor Luckey. Belle, not quite sure what was going on, stood to apologize on Loki's behalf before being pushed back down. He had been wincing trying to sit up during the situation only for Tyon to force him back down with her pinky. The Amazons explaining that it was for his and Loki's own good. The boy, still concerned, wasn't sure how to act until Tiona started asking him about what kind of hero stories he knew. Gingerly not trying to move much, his thoughts were occupied with the legends his grandfather told him, happy to find someone in his familia who loved the stories as much as he did. As the Amazon and him enjoyed each other company, Tyon watching her sister and Belle chat away, smiling fondly that her sister seemed to have found a new friend, secretly enjoying their conversation as much as they were. Whhhhhhyyyyyyy. Luckey complained, as the rest of her first-class familia hung their head at the goddess, having to resort to dragging her by her heels through the streets of Orario. AIS, who had been stoic at the time, looked at the scene with a tilted head. Is that what it means to be a hot mess, she wondered, at least until Gareth Beat had joined them. Finn, telling the rest of the team to meet the remaining expedition members at the hostess for drinks and celebration once they got cleaned. The ridiculous group went on their way, as they tried to ignore the incredulous stares of the city following them. Chapter end notes. Kind of a short chapter. Sorry about that. Was struggling with this one, yet feeling better with how it turned out. This would be all for today. Next part coming soon, so please like and subscribe to get notified as soon as the next part drops.